All right, welcome back to another edition of Horsemen Pro Football Talk podcast. I am Brad.
This is Zach.
And I'm Hefe.
Hey, it switched. We're glad you're here.
It did, didn't it?
It did, yeah, for sure. We are glad you're here. Today we are reviewing the, I almost forgot what we were talking about today, the AFC West. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button, the bell icon, so you never miss an update. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, head on over to YouTube and help us out. We certainly appreciate the support. And as always, we hope you're sharing your favorite podcast with your friends and your grandma to help us get the word out. Also, we have a special announcement coming up regarding a format change at the end. You're not going to want to miss this. Details, we'll go into details at the end of this podcast. So, okay, guys, are we ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Who do you want to start with?
Anyone other than the Chiefs. You know, the Chiefs are going to be number one.
Yeah,
I'm good with starting with anyone of the other three.
That. Do we dare make Hefe pick a team to go first?
Well,
yeah. What are you wearing, Hefe?
I'm wearing my Derek Carr jersey. I'm still Derek Carr guy. Unfortunately, I do have the Raiders in last in this division, so I'm fine with starting there.
You want to start with the Raiders?
Fine with starting there.
Okay. All right. I disagree with you. The Raiders last year, they started 6-3, and their offense was 10th overall last season. The defense is a different story. I think they finished 30th. Pretty much trash, right? But there's hope. They've got a new defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, and he's sure to help them improve, which isn't saying much. I think I could help them improve from 30 just by accident. And just not even knowing what I'm doing. I think the defense probably finished 29th. But he has an interesting resume, despite the fact that he failed miserably as head coach in Jacksonville. But then again, who doesn't do that either? Duvall, y'all. His first – sorry, couldn't help it. I should say Duvall, y'all.
No, what's funny, I'm in Jacksonville right now for my day job. And so we were driving down the street earlier, and there's some old guy walking down the street with his Jaguars shirt on, and it said Duval right across the front, and I busted out laughing.
No disrespect. So in Gus Bradley's first year with the Chargers, they held their opponents to 17 points per game, and then they've struggled after that. There could be a lot of reasons why. And most importantly, he was an integral part of that ferocious Seahawks defense from 10 years ago, but he also has history with Chucky, right? And culture is critical to job performance. Trust me on that one. So and now the Raiders also have a permanent home with a crowd in it, and it could make a difference. Now, it's not enough to fix the sputtering of finishing 8-8. Is that what at the? Yeah, they were 6-3 and then they finished 8-8. So it's not enough to fix that kind of sputtering. But hopefully Bradley can help. Hopefully Chucky knows what he's doing. This could go either way. They could either go back to the 6-3 form that they started the season with, and actually, I won't. I was going to say challenge for the division. I don't mean that at all. And nobody's challenging this division. It's pretty much locked up. But as much as I hate to say it, this could also be the end for Chucky. Personally, I don't want to say that I think mediocrity is set in, but I'm afraid mediocrity is set in. I'm a huge Chucky fan, and I won't go as far to say as the game has passed him by. But I don't know. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he doesn't have the same kind of fire. I don't know. Maybe he's just lost the momentum, and a change of the guard may be in order. This season should tell us. But again, I hope I'm wrong. I've been a fan since the AFC Championship was stolen from him by Beelzebub and the crew of referees that made all that happen, that built this dynasty, and that it was the Raiders' game to lose. That was a long time ago. We'll let it go. Additional side note, rumors are abound this is a real meat of the matter, right? This is what we came for. Rumors are abound that the Raiders are after Davante Adams, but who isn't, right? But on the heels of the news that the Packers and Aaron Rodgers have agreed to a one-year deal that gives Rodgers the autonomy to choose where he plays next year. And the Raiders are he wants to go out west. He said that the Raiders are one of the teams that are supposed to be one of the favorites for whatever reason that is. I don't know if that's made up. I don't know. We might see Adams, Rodgers, and Chucky in Vegas next year. And this whole thing could flip. Regardless of what they do this year, this thing could flip very quickly next year. I want to see. Now, this poses a problem for the deal with Carr because they've yet to come to a deal with Carr, right?
Right. Yeah, they've had contract extension talks, and they've been talking with him in the offseason. But he didn't do bad last year. Derek Carr had 4,100 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions last year. Not a bad year by any stretch. So I feel like they want to see him not only stay healthy for another season, but to also be able to be productive with this team for another season, or at least, the first half of the season, see where he's at, and then maybe they get it done. And that's really the only thing I could think of that they haven't given him a contract extension. Because look, if they don't give him a contract extension at some point in the season, then with Aaron Rodgers sitting there, are you going to keep Derek Carr, who likely isn't going to take them to the playoffs again? This will be the 5th straight season of them not going to the playoffs if they don't. Are you going to stick with that guy no matter how well he's played for your team? Or are you going to go for an absolute legend, first ballot Hall of Famer, Aaron Rodgers, when he's going to be cheap? You're going to be able to get him, again, like you said, probably going to get Davante Adams. If you can score those two any way you can get it, then get rid of Derek Carr for that.
Well, it makes me wonder if there's already been a conversation. And I don't know, I'm just speculating, but if there's been a conversation between Rodgers and Chucky or whoever in the organization, whatever, that he would like to go there and they can make that happen for him. I mean, we don't know what kind of side table conversations are going on, which might give credence to this Davante Adams rumor. So maybe that's why they haven't given Carr the contract. And if that's the case, it's not going to happen. And there's no, because anybody be a fool. You'd be a fool not to take Rodgers over Carr. That's just my opinion.
Especially because if you look at how Mike Mayock, Mike Mayock was a fine ESPN analyst, doing stuff for ESPN NFL. But ever since he took the job of the Raiders GM and paired up with John Gruden, like, their drafting has been awful up to this point, And look, Cleveland Farrell is the top of that list. He hasn't been terrible, but for where they took him and who they took him over in his own draft class, it's just, they have a lot of making up to do. They have to find a way to save their jobs this year. Kind of like you were talking about John Gruden. Like, we're going to have to see if the league has just passed him by or not. He hasn't been getting it done as a coach. Mayock hasn't gotten it done as a GM. This is a huge prove-it year for a lot of people on this team. And if they have to sever ties with Derek Carr because of that situation, then I could easily see that being done.
Yeah. What do you think about the Raiders this year, Zach?
Well, actually, I have to agree with pretty much everything you guys are saying. I don't think it's going to be a good year for them. I'm kind of on the fence about Chucky, whether this is going to be his last year or so, depending on how well they do. They do have some bright spots with running back Josh Jacobs and tight end Darren Waller. They shined last year en route to earning Pro Bowl distinctions. But the questions are swirling about Derek Carr. Like Hefe said, it is a huge prove-it year for him. And I'm not big on their wide receiver core. Henry Ruggs will do well, and they brought in John Brown from the Bills, but he was injured almost the entire season last year. And pretty much the rest of their receiver rosters, lower tier guys. So if they could bring in Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams, watch out. That'll change everything. But this season, not going to happen. Defensively, they picked up Yannick Ngokwu, but he really hasn't done anything since his Jacksonville days a few years ago either. And there's just not much else there on the defensive side. I do like their draft pick in safety Trayvon Moehrig. They drafted him in the second round of the draft, which I thought was a steal. But they really reached hard in the first by selecting tackle Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama. I think they could have used that pick for somebody with more value, but that decision could pay off in the long run. That's neither here nor there. We'll see here in a few years. Regardless, that's the way they went. I haven't finished it in 7-10 on the year. It's not going to be pretty for Derek Carr, Chucky, and the boys in Vegas.
Do you have them? Where do you have them finishing in the division?
I have them tied for – no, actually, I have them, tied for second and third.
Yeah, it's about where I had them. These three teams, all three of these teams, obviously we're getting ready to talk about it. They could go either way. I think they're all hovering around 500, give or take, depending on circumstances, the way things happen. But I don't expect anything spectacular out of any of the three. And
Yeah,
Hefe, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think they all have potential.
Agreed.
But the way everything is, either with coaching or the rosters, I just think there's something with these three bottom teams that's going to hold them back significantly this season.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Hefe, anything you want to add about the Raiders before we move on?
Yeah, I have them going 5-12 this season, which seems. I looked at their schedule before we got on here today. I looked back at their schedule and tried to think like there's got to be another 2-3 games that I could give them, and I really just can't. Their schedule's kind of difficult. The AFC West plays some good teams this year, and obviously in the division, like you guys said, there's talent on all these teams. It's just whether or not the bottom three can find ways to win. And this Raiders team, I like a lot. He hasn't produced the way he used to at cornerback. So this defense, I'm still just not feeling this defense. I've already mentioned Cleveland Farrell. He's just underproduced. He's average. He's not going to win you a game. He's not going to lose you a game. He's going to do what he needs to do. Max Crosby's really the only star on the defense. He's the guy I think they need to build around. Obviously, Trayvon Moehrig getting drafted this year, another guy that, like Zach said, was a steal. I'm surprised somebody didn't grab him in the first round of this year's draft. I just don't think there's enough talent. I don't like that they got rid of so many offensive linemen and brought in a bunch of new guys. I do think Alex Leatherwood will be a fine tackle in the NFL. But I just think that, this team doesn't have enough talent. As somebody that roots for Derek Carr and the Raiders, I wish I could have a different opinion on this. But like I said, I have them going 5-12 and finishing fourth in third division this year.
Okay. There you have it. All right, who's next?
I
think the right thing to do would be to talk about the Broncos next.
Okay.
I can get down on that.
All right, so the Broncos it is. They posted a losing record for the last 5 seasons. Was that their last? Yeah, since their last Super Bowl appearance. They were 5-11 last year. The top 3 coaches. This is what drives me nuts. This is the Minnesota problem right here. Vic Fangio, Pat Shurmur, and Ed Donatell. So the head coach, Vic Fangio, the offensive coordinator, Pat Shurmur, and the defensive coordinator, Ed Donatell. They have a combined 96 years of coaching. 96. And they won 5 fucking games. All right. Yeah, you can't tell. I mean, so much experience, it brings the questions about them. Like we were just talking about Chucky. Are they tired? Has the game passed them by? Are they just too tired to be effective? Is that have they lost their fire? I honestly don't know. And we've talked about this with Minnesota. We just talked about it with Chucky. On paper, from a coaching standpoint, this staff should have the answers, and it just isn't working. I also want to bring up the quarterback situation. You know how I am about quarterback controversies. I'm not saying there's a quarterback controversy here, but this has the potential for one. Drew Lock struggled last year. Now we've got Teddy Bridgewater and we got Brett Ripien. I just got to say again, I don't care who we go with, but make a decision and stick with it. And if things are so bad that you have to change, make a decision and stick with that. And when you make that decision, pick the person. By that point, look, we all know the Broncos aren't going to win this division. The Broncos probably aren't going to the playoffs. We can see that. So if you come out on a 4-game skid and you want to change your quarterback, then change it to the guy who's going to start next year. Period. Don't piss around and try to win a couple games so you can finish 5. And I don't give a shit. If you don't make the playoffs, and nobody cares if you only win 1 or 2 games, start fixing it for next year. End of rant.
But yeah, I pretty much have the same sentiment you do with the Denver Broncos. They have talent all over this roster. Melvin Gordon and rookie Javonte Williams at running back. Wide receivers, Cortland Sutton, he's coming off injury. He'll be back. Jerry Jeudy is a star in the making. Plus, they have tight end Noah Fant on the offensive side. Defensively, the Broncos are returning Pro Bowlers. Bradley Chubb, Justin Simmons, and Von Miller is going to be back after his injury last year. So this defense is going to be great. Plus, they swooped in and stole cornerback Patrick Surtain out of Alabama with the 9th overall pick in the draft. That's definitely going to help out this defense. So, like I said, they have talent all over this roster. There's no reason the Broncos cannot be good other than the 2 things you've already said. The coaching staff, I'm not big on Vic Fangio as a head coach. I think they need to go in a different direction, especially if it doesn't work out this year, and I think they will. And until this quarterback situation has worked out and they have their guy, the Broncos are just not going to be able to capitalize on this extremely talented roster that John Elway has built. So for now, I have them finishing dead last in the division at 6-11.
And I mean, it's hard not to agree with what you guys are saying, right? You look at the quarterback situation, and that's everything for this team. They have so much depth they have depth at receiver, they have depth in the secondary on defense. They have obviously Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Shelby Harris, Mike Purcell. They have, I mean, everything you could possibly want. Their offensive line is nice. They have a couple of running backs you could like. I mean, the quarterback situation for this team, I mean, it's wild how prominent it is, especially because both of these guys had really disappointing 2020 seasons after there was so much hope for them to have good years, especially with the pieces around him. Now, Drew Lock, obviously, he loses Cortland Sutton, doesn't have him to throw to last year. But you still had Jerry Jeudy, you still had Tim Patrick, you still had KJ Hamler, and he still had, I mean, just a very below average season last year. And again, I don't know if that's the coaching, if that's the player. I wasn't too huge on Drew Lock coming out of college. There's still a lot to prove for him. But if I'm Vic Fangio, I mean, by the end of training camp, I would think Teddy Bridgewater has to be the guy.
You have to go with Teddy, right?
It's got to be him. You don't trade for him like that. And I think they reworked his contract right, but they brought him in from Carolina. Like you got to have him be the starter. He's had obviously more experience, but he's also had seasons where he was a bit above average. He's showed that he can play in the NFL, especially again with the weapons on this team, with the O-line that this team has. He does that. I think that's the biggest factor from Denver to Carolina for Teddy Bridgewater is the fact that this O-line is way better than what he had in Carolina. And I think that can be huge for him. I think that can be huge for this team. I think the way the season and they'll lose a couple games, and that's when Teddy comes in. If Teddy was a starter all season, maybe they end up with a 9-8, 10-7 kind of record. But I do have them going 8-9 this season, and a lot of that is because the defense is going to be so powerful. I think that defense is going to keep them in a lot of ball games this year. And I think with the talent that they have on offense, they'll find ways to at least get down the field and kick the field goal to win the game, or get down the field, be able to score a touchdown to win the game. So I have them going 8-9, finishing third in their division this year.
I could see it.
Yeah, I have the Chargers at 5-12, and the Broncos at 7-10.
Man, you say Chargers at 5-12? Holy crap! No faith in Justin Herbert, huh?
Oh yeah, we haven't gotten there. I'm getting ready to show you my faith in Justin Herbert.
Let's hear it.
All right, we ready to move on?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So the Chargers close the season with 4 straight wins with Herbert. I love this kid. I don't want to say, I shouldn't have said I'm going to show you my faith in Herbert, because I like this kid. But all right, they've got a new coach, Brandon Staley. Let's look at his resume, shall we? In 2017, Staley was hired by 2017. Right, we're entering the 21 season. 2017, Staley was hired by the Chicago Bears as their outside linebackers coach for his first coaching stint in the NFL. All right. In 2019, 2 years later, 2 years with the Bears, he was hired by the Denver Broncos as their outside linebackers coach. In 2020, Staley was hired by the Los Angeles Rams as their defensive coordinator. Now, this is his only year as a defensive coordinator, and he helped guide the Rams' defense to first some points and total yards allowed, position himself, to be one of the top head coaching candidates of the league. And in 2021, he was hired for the head coach of the Los Angeles. I mean, what? Who wrote this? What is this real?
It's all about who you know and who you know.
Look, at this rate, I can get I can get a graduate assistant at a college job now, jump to the NFL as a line coach next year, and then be the head coach in just a few years. I'm out.
Do it.
Okay, so a little bit of redemption here, right? All right, so never fear. The new defensive coordinator, Ronaldo Hill, has 5 years as a defensive back coach. 5 years as a defensive back coach. He's now the defensive coordinator for a coach that's been in the league for 4 years. But it's okay. We have a Lombardi on the team, right? It's got to be worth something. Joe Lombardi, offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback coach in New Orleans. According to Wikipedia, he's the reason Drew Brees broke all those records. They're in good hands, right? They're in good hands. Oh, he was also the offensive coordinator under offensive genius Jim Caldwell in Detroit after being fired after a 1-6 start. For fuck's sake, what is going on here? So Herbert is in his sophomore season, one of the hardest for a quarterback statistically. He struggles one iota. This whole thing is over before it starts. Actually, I think it's over now. You guys, we can, because we edit this, we can take a few moments for you to change your picks. I suggest you do that. Chargers fans, I love you guys, but just sit back and relax and get used to the fact that this is just another year of taking a backseat to the Rams.
Yeah, so I might have to take you up on that, because I was going to say I do like the direction the Chargers are heading, but let me clarify and say the talent on the roster, not necessarily the coaching situation. I didn't dive deep into it like you did, but you just sold me on that absolutely. But I will say, in regards to the roster, quarterback Justin Herbert proved last season he's going to be a stud in this league. Running back Austin Eckler is the number one running back on the team now. He's a very serviceable back, especially in the passing game. I expect him to do good things. And, of course, wide receiver Keenan Allen, always deadly on the outside. But they did lose tight end Hunter Henry to the Patriots and replace him with Jared Cook, which is a downgrade. And I don't like the rest of the receiving core. Defensively, really the only bright spot, in my opinion, is defensive end Joey Bosa. So there's just still not much there on the defensive side. So for now, because of the coaching and because the Chargers just aren't good as a team on the whole right now, I have them sitting at 7-10 on the season. But I do expect them to get better over the next few years, whether that's with the new coaching staff or not.
Man, yeah, you guys are both way lower on the Chargers than I am, because look, I mean, Brad talked about how the Broncos coaching staff has 95, 96 years of coaching experience, and they can only win 5 games in a season. And
point taken. I, that you spun that right back around to me very nicely. I like that. Shows me you're paying attention.
I feel like Brandon Staley and his high rise, part of it is because of this young coaches getting jobs thing that's happening all over the NFL. But I do think that with his progression and where he's been and what he was able to do with the Rams in 2020, only 1 year with that defense, and sure he has Aaron Donald and he has Jalen Ramsey, so it's easy to be a really good defense. But he was, like you said, he was able to coach him to probably the best defense in the league last year, and so in the NFL, if a guy's a leader, those guys tend to rise and stay in the NFL a bit longer. So I think that he I don't know if saying he's the right guy for the job. I don't know if I'm ready to really go there. Like you said, he has very limited experience, so it's hard to really tell about that. But I certainly think he has the roster to be able to win games. They were able to upgrade the offensive line, which has been the Chargers' main issue for years at this point. They've been stacked everywhere, just needed to have an offensive line. And the fact that you have, Justin Herbert on a rookie contract, Austin Eckler as your key running back. If he goes down, they're in a tough situation. We saw that last year. That when Austin Eckler's not there, they're just a different team. So hopefully he can stay healthy. If Austin Eckler stays healthy, this team has a lot of different options because, like Zach said, he can do so much out of the backfield. And the defense, I still like this defense a lot. They've had to lose a couple of pieces to free agency over the last couple of seasons, most notably the Casey Hayward Jr., who is now with the Broncos, and Melvin Ingram, who is now with the Steelers. But look, if Derwin James stays healthy, I want to see Derwin James stay healthy so bad. I'm a huge Derwin James fan. I think he can be one of the best, if not the best safety in the NFL. He can do everything, but he's had 2 years of really unfortunate and unlucky injuries that have happened. So I would really like to see Derwin James stay healthy. I think he completes this defense. I still think this is a really good defense. It can take the Chargers places. Unfortunately, the most places they can go is second in the division because they have the Chiefs in their division. So I have them finishing 10-7 this year. Pretty decent record, nothing spectacular. But they, like I said, finished second in their division behind the Chiefs, and they missed the playoffs with that record.
Yeah, and I'd like to go on record to say this is another any of these three teams could finish 10-7, and any of them could finish 5 and whatever, depending on the circumstances. So if these young guys that I meant what I said, but I'm being a little dramatic. If these young guys are the answer and they have the energy to put this together and they surprise some teams in the league, and Herbert comes out firing like he did, they very well could win 10 games. And that goes for any, if Gus Bradley is the answer in Vegas, they could win 10 games. Fangio finally they get firing all cylinders. They get the quarterback situated. They could win 10 games. So it's too bad to an extent that the Chiefs are as good as they are, because there's going to be some good games in the AFC West this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be trying to tune into both of the times that the Chargers play the Chiefs. I'll be trying to get to those. Those should be a couple of really competitive, really high scoring games.
Yeah, I would agree. All right. Anything you guys want to add? Oh, we still got the Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
It's such a foregone conclusion. I just was going to roll right over it. I don't even know what to say. They won the regular season division title for the 5th straight year. They're 60-20 over the last 5 years. By contrast, the Chargers, the next highest team, and they're at 38-42. What is that? 22 games less over the last 5 years of wins. Nothing's really changed here, except a whole new entire offensive line. So the only chance, I saw a quote today was from the head coach of Angola when they first played the Dream Team back in the 90s. And he said we were hanging with him until they went on a 46-1 run. That's what's going to happen here. If the Chiefs sputter, and I use that term very loosely, I promise you, out of the gate, this will be the only reason they lose 4 or 5 games, in my opinion, is if they drop a couple early, just trying to get it all together and get it to gel. But in the end, this team very well has the potentiality to make me eat my words about the Colts being the AFC team to beat. We very well could see another Bucks Chiefs Super Bowl. We could see, there are 4 top teams in my opinion, and it's the Bucks, the Packers, the Chiefs, and the Colts, and they're just gonna be on another level again this year.
Yeah, look, I mean, they're the 2-time defending AFC champions. They're 1 season removed out of winning a Super Bowl. They're returning 6 Pro Bowlers, and they replaced Pro Bowler tackle Eric Fisher with another in Orlando Brown. So this doesn't need to be said, but of course, I'm going to say it for emphasis. This offense is going to be absolutely deadly once again. No worries there. My main concern with the Chiefs is their defense. They weren't the best last season, but they were good enough to get the job done. Defensive end Frank Clark, he's facing some major legal issues. They need to get that worked out with him. He's a big-time player for the defense, but they still have defensive tackle Chris Jones and, of course, the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu in the back. So the defense will be all right, but because the offense and their special teams is just so good, this team is not going to slow down this year. I expect them to easily win the division. No surprise there, huh? And they'll be the number 1 seed in the AFC playoffs at 15-2. I have them dropping a game to the Raiders in Week 10 just because the Raiders seem to just get a lucky win on them every single year. And then losing to the Broncos Week 18 because the entire Kansas City starters are going to be sitting on the bench resting for the playoff run.
Yeah, that's exactly. I would have had the Chiefs at 15-2, but they had to lose the last week because all their starters are sitting. So I also have them going 14-3, winning their division for all the same reasons you guys said. They're stacked, and the offensive line. They had. I mean, the offensive line they had last year, when healthy, was still one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. They completely restructure this thing, and somehow they get better. I mean, you have, like Zach said, Orlando Brown, Pro Bowler, Joe Thuney, former Pro Bowler, Austin Blythe is a fine center, Mike Remmers, one of the better tackles in the league, and obviously Laurent Duvernay Tardif, he wasn't there for him last year because he went back to Canada to help with the COVID situation, but they have him back this year, and he's one of the better interior linemen in the league. So I mean, Patrick Mahomes will have all the protection he needs to be able to do what he needs. And I think this year we're really going to see what Clyde Edwards-Helaire brings to the table with the new protection that he has, the kind of athletes that they have up front, and obviously the speed that they have on this team. I think Clyde's going to have a big-time year for him. And that's something me and Zach, whenever we start talking about fantasy football, I'll have a lot to say about CEH this year, because I think he's going to be very explosive and going to be able to do multiple things. Andy Reid uses the running backs in the pass game a lot, and I think that's going to be a lot of the recipe this year. And so, like you guys said, a big win for the Chiefs this year, another division win. Nobody should even contest them for the division this year.
Okay, I do want to go over the schedule real quick. I have some questions for the both of you. You both went 15-2, and one of the games you gave was against the Broncos in Week 18, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I got a couple questions. The Chiefs are they're another level. We got it, but so are the Packers. That's in Week 9. What was the other loss you guys had?
I had them losing to the Raiders in Week 10.
Okay. We have the Ravens in Week 2. The Broncos in Week 1. In Week 1, anything can happen, as we saw with Indianapolis and Jacksonville. The Browns are Week 1. Probably not going to happen. but that's prime for an upset. They're in Baltimore week 2. This line's still not completely gelled together. That could be a dangerous game there.
That is, I do have Lamar Jackson finally getting over that Chiefs hump and beating the Chiefs at home in week 2.
Yeah. And we don't have to go through these one by one. I picked an upset in Tennessee. I'm sure you guys could berate me and belittle me all you want there if you wanted to. It's still a potential upset because anybody can sputter at any time. But they've got the Bills, the Giants. Giants are on the road. They got the Packers. They've got all these West games. The Steelers are on the road, so that's probably. But there's some dangerous steps through here, and they are above another level. This is I'm not giving you too much of a hard time because I have them at 14-3, but that offensive line in those first couple games really scare me, and then that stretch where they're in Tennessee and they've got the Packers, and so that's why I said about maybe 4 or 5 losses, but they very well could run through this pretty much unscathed. So they definitely, if they get that line together, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, you make a good point, and yeah, anything can happen. I mean, when I was going through it, I have the Browns and the Chiefs week 1. I have obviously the Chiefs winning that, but I think that was only because it's in Kansas City and Arrowhead. It's going to have the fans back, and it's going to be absolutely loud. I don't think the Cleveland boys are going to be ready for that, so I gave the Chiefs a win there. The Ravens-Chiefs game in Baltimore, that's kind of a toss-up to me, but I'm going the opposite of the way Hefe feels. I just don't think Lamar's going to be ready to get over that hump yet. So I picked the Chiefs there. And then the Packers game, of course I wanted to go with the Packers, but I don't know. It's at Arrowhead. It's going to be a huge game. Aaron Rodgers is going to be there. So because they're at home, that's why I went that way. So it wouldn't surprise me if they do end up dropping another game or 2 here. But they could very easily run the table too. So
yeah, I agree. So I'm not giving you that much of a hard time. I just want to kind of walk through some of these games because it is a tricky step, especially through the middle of the season. I think those first 2 games and then that stretch in the middle of the season could catch them off guard. But they still win the division. They're still probably the number 1 seed, and they're probably going to find their way to the AFC Championship, if not the Super Bowl.
I would agree.
Yeah. Okay. Anything you guys want to add before we go?
Nah, that's all we got. We got a good one next week, though.
Yeah, with the NFC South.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah, there was some news today that the Chiefs, all these teams are changing their nicknames and whatnot. The Chiefs are going to be retiring their mascot War Paint, but they're going to keep their nickname, the Chiefs.
Okay. Yeah, the whole Guardians thing caught me off guard this week. No pun intended.
I was about to say.
I see why they did it because it looks like the Indians, and it'll keep their with their uniforms consistency with the overall aesthetic. I know some people are crying that. First of all, I don't understand why people care that much. I've seen teams change names my whole life, and it's not a big deal. Everybody will get used to it. If you're a fan, you're still a fan. I think some people just want to bitch, and I'm so tired of it. It's usually the people that complain about people bitching are the ones that are always bitching. Yeah, and I've seen people say, but there's a roller derby team named the Guard. Who cares?
If the Guardians go out and win the World Series next season, nobody's going to care.
No,
they're going to be, I'm Guardians all the way.
Yeah, and in 5 years, nobody will care at all anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there'll be 1 or 2 of those guys. They're the same people on Facebook complaining about everything. But so that's interesting news about the Chiefs. I think it could be done. I think it could be done tastefully. I don't know what that answer is, but I think I don't have a problem with Chief Warpaint. I think knowing what I know about Chief Wahoo, I think it was time. You can talk about the respect with naming but it's a caricature, and it wasn't intended to be nice. It was intended to be funny, and kind of a mean-spirited way. And I don't mean to overplay that whatsoever. But we've seen caricatures of other races, and they're just not acceptable. And I don't know why the Native American caricature is still acceptable. And I'm glad to see them do it. I hate that it needs to be done because of the history of the franchise. But it's still the same. I mean, look at the whole Browns to Baltimore and then New Cleveland. I mean, people get used to it, and it won't be a big deal. So that's my two thoughts anyway.
Yeah, that's about how I feel. And the only other real news that I have from this division is a quote that came out today as we're recording this. Von Miller, he's entering the final year of his current contract, and he said he's, quote, at peace with his decision or with his situation. So sounds like this might be either, I can't tell if he's talking about this as just his last run with Denver or, this is the last year of his career, but we know defensive linemen and offensive linemen generally are only in the league for 10 to 12 years max. So this sounds like it might be Von Miller's last ride this year.
Yeah. Are we gonna see a super team developed in Vegas? Miller gonna jump ship?
That would be pretty electric. I'd be fine with that. See Von Miller, Devontae Adams, and Aaron Rodgers there next year. That'd be great.
I mean, it's been done in basketball for several years. Brady pulled it off in football this year. Rodgers could certainly pull that kind of weight and assemble quite a crew there if he wanted to. Be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, we saw when Peyton Manning left Indy, he joined forces with Wes Welker. He was the enemy, and
yeah,
anything's possible when you start switching teams.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that does it for this week. We want to remind you to please be sure to show us some love, like, share, and subscribe, and all that stuff. And so here we are, the big announcement. We are moving to Patreon. We've talked about it amongst each other. We've talked to some of our members of our community, and we've decided to build a private Horsemen sports community on Patreon, and you are invited. Members will get access to Fantasy Central updates, feature game previews and recaps, odds and betting picks, and commentary. Participate in a chance to be included in future episodes. Join us here on the podcast, live chats with us. Early access to all content, including written. We're going to start adding written contact articles and that kind of thing. Contests, prizes, so much more. So go to our Facebook or our Twitter page at Horsemen Sports. Follow us there, and that's where we will post the sign up information. I think we agreed on August 1st. So August 1st, it'll be there, and let us know if you have any questions. And of course, we will see you back here again next week when we review the NFC South. Till then, thanks for joining us. Deuces.